Okay, I think we might actually be live. So, hi, Keri. Welcome, everyone. If there's anyone watching, if not, you can always watch later because technology. So, welcome to Unsafe Space. We have two rules. I forgot to tell Keri that we have two rules. The rules are, maybe I told you the other day. Feelings are not arguments and no hitting. Can you abide by those rules, Keri?
I think I can abide by those rules, yes.
I just have to check, given your history.
There's a little bit of history that you don't know about, so yes.
Yes. So anyway, welcome. Thank you so much. Obviously this show is just starting, so there's, not a lot of viewership right now, but hopefully someday you'll be famous for being one of the first people on the show. I've known you for a while, and the reason I want to talk to you and what I think, aside from just thinking you're a kick-ass awesome person, people can just go look at the picture of you shooting shotguns and get a crush on you if they want to. But what I want to talk to you about is your history. So you were a real live bought-in SJW probably when I met you, although I didn't know it because it was through business.
Oh, yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about what you were like, what that was like, how you became, because I don't think you grew up as an SJW. Like,
no.
How'd the indoctrination process go, and how was that cult?
That cult, yes. Well, yeah.
No, I'm not trying to lead. The questions aren't leading at all. Don't worry.
No.
They're
Well, I
completely
call
objective.
it that, and I've actually been criticized for calling it that, but I think it meets a lot of the requirements to be called a cult. I wasn't raised that way. I was raised Southern Baptist and conservative, and I kind of I went through a transformation early in my life that also was maybe a 2 or 3 year period of changing my beliefs, where I just sort of discarded all of that. And so I believe I became indoctrinated in college. I was a science major, but I was a women's studies minor, and I did, took all the critical race theory classes, all the women's studies classes, and I believe that's when I started to become indoctrinated to some of the ideas that we see being popularized now. The difference was, at that time, I felt like it was a little more open-minded, because I remember having, interesting debates in my women's studies classes. Maybe I'm remembering that wrong, but it didn't seem to be such a, fundamentalist kind of religion back then. It was actually something that helped me open up my worldview, and that's why I think really responded to it at first. So yeah, I would say I became indoctrinated then.
Can we interrupt for a second? Yeah. What is critical theory? Can you just tell people what critical theory is? Because I think a lot of people are like, I don't know what the words you're using mean.
Okay, so critical theory, the best way I would describe it, like critical theory for dummies, is just they believe that the highest activity to engage in might be just to criticize everything around you. I truly believe that's what it is. It's like, let's just take everything apart. Like, I have a friend who spent years probably watching reality TV so that she could write a book criticizing it, and it's a part of critical theory of the media and gender and race. And I mean, it's really just, let's look at this thing and let's take it apart and let's completely let's offer criticism, but let's offer nothing in its place. So that's the way.
So it's like a nihilistic deconstructionism on like a massive scale.
Yes, and you can do it through different lens. Like, I remember in college, I took a class on like women in the Bible. So we were looking at the Bible through the lens of gender and sex. Let's deconstruct the Bible and let's completely take it apart through this pre-existing lens that we're expecting it to be sexist. And so let's deconstruct it in that way. And so we did the same. I took a race and religion class that was the same kind of way. I took, I think I took a class on porn that was, it was about the, it was critiquing porn from the point of view that it's all heterosexist. So you can go in with like this different lens, and then you just kind of view everything through that. And
porn's a weird thing, because actually I wasn't in the porn industry, like, in films or anything, but like I was doing some tech related to the porn industry, and so it's an industry that I kind of am familiar with. And
I remember that, I think.
Yeah, there seemed to be this like big feminist split with respect to porn, where like There's the feminists who think it's horrible and exploitative and misogynistic and all that kind of stuff, and women shouldn't do it. And then there's the feminists who were like empowered by it. Does critical theory like allow both of those, or is it one or the like?
I think it allows for both of those, but definitely the trend became to be pro porn and pro sex, at least in the time that I was in these classes, because I mean, that was the whole, at the time there was this whole tension and kind of conflict between what they called second wave and third wave, and, you know, us being part of the third wave. And we viewed the second wave as being, oh, you know, they're against sex and they're against women expressing themselves in high heels and makeup. And, you know, I agree with a lot of that. It's like, yeah, you should be able to express yourself however you want. And so I understood what some of the criticism was about. However, I think all of that has become so much more toxic, especially in the past 5 years. It's like all those little schisms have become really heated and hateful. And so now you'll view like that kind of, I would say maybe the anti-porn part of the feminism might be, you might call those the radical feminists. Some of those are radical feminists. And so a lot of radical feminists also have issues with this idea of, you know, they have issues with the idea that gender is socially constructed. And so they obviously are going to have tension with the third or fourth wave, whatever they're calling themselves now, trans activists. And so they get labeled TERFs, which is trans exclusionary radical feminists. They get called this thing. It's like it's supposed to be, you're a TERF. And then, but so there's this weird tension between those two camps within feminism. And I think you see a lot of that. That's just one of the ones I see that gets more heated online. But.
So Jason M in chat, first, he says hi to you. Second is he's saying that critical theories is very focused on like the oppressor and the oppressed, like power relationships. Is that part of it?
Absolutely. So I've been trying to sort of untangle what this SJWism is ever since I started this transition, because I couldn't really understand I couldn't really understand what was happening in my head. Suddenly all these things that I believed for 20 years, and I'd been really in this camp, in a very small part of the left. My echo chamber was pretty, I would say it was a very small in terms of ideology. And
you're in the entertainment industry to boot, which is not
even within the entertainment industry. Yeah, because I was in the entertainment industry, but I wasn't like the typical entertainment industry person, at least at that time. I was more, I was trying to push social justice through entertainment. So I built a career repping comedians, not all of them, but a lot of them who I would call, you know, social justice comedians, because I believed in the work. It wasn't that I wanted to work in entertainment. It was that I wanted to change the world with comedy.
Right. Or you're trying to change the culture through social justice.
Right. Which is what a lot of, I would say, people that I call professional SJWs, that's their goal. Whether they're working in entertainment or media, you know, journalism, tech,
Twitter. Yeah.
Twitter. Yeah, they got to put that. That's the primary goal, and then whatever the goal of the company is comes second. You know. So anyway, that's why I was in it. But wait a minute.
So I just want to back. So you got in college. You think you were indoctrinated, and then what's your trajectory after that? How long were you kind of ardently SJW?
Well, I think I was indoctrinated, but I think it was a slow boil. It wasn't all at once. Okay. It was, you know, I thought it was liberal. I thought I was just a liberal. But over time, you know, if I had known 20 years ago that I was going to be asked to justify censorship or to excuse violence by Antifa, I'd be like, wait, what are you talking about? I'm a liberal, not like, this isn't for me. Yeah. And so, but it happens slowly. They get you to accept these tenets one by one. They've become a lot more mainstream, and they've become a lot more black and white, like very vicious. You know, you believe this, or you're a racist, sexist, homophobic, horrible, bad person. And it's really become this kind of playground. You know, you're with us or against us, and there. It wasn't like that at first. At least I don't remember it being that way. It was just, you know, this is cool. We're studying women's studies, and we're learning about race and religion, and we're learning about these blinders that we may have had on when it comes to these different categories. And so it was an eye-opening experience. I don't think it became, at least in my life, I didn't see the negatives until much later. So, but yeah, to get back to oppression quickly. So I've been trying to untangle what it is, and not from an academic perspective. There are smarter people than me who are doing that. But I think it's it comes down to power. They view the world. So everybody has one, like, kind of an ideology or maybe a belief system in which this is the way they view the world, right? So they view the world through a lens of power, and everything is filtered through that. And it's also the thing that they worship the most. Ironically, it's the thing they worship the most is power. When a SJW dies, you know what they say? This is not a joke. This is real. They say rest in power. They don't say rest in peace. Yes. Like, you Google.
So what's their definition of power? What do they mean by power?
Well, so, and again, there are smarter people than me that can explain how it relates to Marxism. But essentially, again, in the layman's version, I would say it's like Marxism, except instead of talking about class and money and how that divides people into different groups, they basically divide people into different groups based on your sex, your race, all these immutable identity markers. And so their hypothesis, or it's not even a hypothesis, what they say is truth. They say that your power is determined, like an individual's power is determined not by your ability to inflict force on someone, but by what groups you check off. And so
your genetics, basically.
Your genetics.
Sounds like.
Yeah, but they're always evolving in new groups because it's a form of social currency within the ideology to be oppressed. So there's all these groups, right? Men and women. Men are the oppressor and they're privileged. Women are the oppressed and they're marginalized. Okay, so then then you have white people, people of color. You have straight people, gay people. But because it's a social currency to be in the oppressed group within the ideology, there are always new groups popping up. So it's like you'll see essays that are written now about pretty privilege, like, pretty people are privileged and they're the oppressors, and non-traditionally pretty people are oppressed or marginalized. And so then you get to check off another box. And I mean, I think I've even seen it with Christianity, Islam is one of their binaries, but also atheists, and then any kind of religion, or I mean, it's just sorry, that's backwards. Anyone who's religious and atheist is oppressed, but everything's divided into these groups. Yes. And so the more you can check off, the greater voice that you have within the movement.
I would think that this would make the community very divisive, self-divided, like a lot of infighting, and like, I've got these number of boxes, and I'm inventing a new box, and screw you, I don't like this box, and like, totally. Is it just like a herding cats, or is it unified?
Look at any of their conferences. There was a conference, I used to live in Los Angeles, and a few years ago, if you Google it, I'm sure you can find out. No, if you DuckDuckGo it, you can find it. It's
there you go.
I think UCLA had a conference on, intersectionality, or it was one of these words that means SJWism. And it just descended into infighting so much that there were several newspaper articles about it, where everyone in the room is just fighting over who's the most marginalized so that they get the floor, and it just became chaotic. And that happens a lot.
I mean, there's something funny. If they didn't have so much power and influence, it would be funny.
Right. Right, if they didn't have so much power. So actually, that's something I find really interesting, because I talk about SJWism a lot, like in real life and with friends, and online, because I'm trying to, I guess, understand it more and still figure out like what's happening in society. And my perception is that, so I've had people who are on the left as well tell me, well, hey, it's just a sliver of the left. It's not that big in terms of numbers. And maybe they're right. I don't know. Maybe it's not that many people in terms of numbers, but in terms of influence, it's huge, because the most vocal, this part of the left is very vocal. And they've infiltrated, journalism, social media companies, entertainment, all of it. And so they have
typically through the HR departments, actually, but yes.
Yeah, probably. I worked in HR for a while too.
At tech companies, yeah, that's the vector in. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look at Google. I mean, I saw that video, or some of the video of them after Trump won, and it just seemed like they were at a church, and they're up on the stage, and they're assuming that everyone in the room agrees with them. And I was thinking, gosh, imagine if you were conservative there, how hard that would be to work in that environment and to be quiet. I've had people, since I wrote the first essay I wrote about leaving SJWism, I've had people in entertainment and tech and academia write me and say, like, I really like that piece. I'm so afraid to say anything. And so I know the fear is out there. I have people come out to me now. I've had people come out to me as conservative, or like come out to me as libertarian. It's like, I have no idea.
So let's talk about that for a minute. So you were pretty deep into it, not from like an academic perspective, but just in practice and everyday life. And you were in a career trying to forward social justice causes. What was the trigger that had you take a second look at this? What changed? Why did this just not continue on in blissful social justice?
This is hard for me to answer. I've been trying to figure this out. I think there were a couple things that happened. I was undergoing a personal kind of transformation anyway. I'd started going to the Agape Spiritual Center in Los Angeles after almost 20 years of considering myself agnostic. And I was really searching. And that kind of opened my mind a bit. And then the preacher there, what's his name? I don't know if he calls himself a preacher. Reverend Michael Bernard Beckwith. He was great. And then I also I had a therapist who suggested that I read The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. And that might help me a bit with issues I was having. And I resisted it because I thought it was self-help. And I was like, that sounds stupid. But I finally listened to it. And I think this is funny because at that time I was so tightly wound and stuff. I listened to it on like 2 times the speed setting so I could get The Power of Now really fast, like now in the car. I'm like, okay, super. And then it actually surprisingly helped me a lot. And I went back and listened to it again. But I think kind of what he was saying that resonated with me and that goes against the SJW ideology is kind of about like, don't complain. I think it's one of his quotes is, if you're unhappy with the situation, you need to change it or leave it, or just accept it. Because to resist it and to complain about it all the time, it makes you a victim. I'm like, yes, that's exactly what that ideology is about. Just complete complaining and criticizing and seeing yourself as a victim and seeing some kind of virtue in that, being a victim.
Sure.
So, so that book actually changed the way I thought about a lot of things. But then in terms of political, I guess if I'm going on too long, let me know.
No. I mean, I think this makes sense. The only thing that I would throw in there, just because it was, you're reminding me of something. I just did a presentation on, there was a CERN scientist who was suspended for a presentation he gave about whether or not there was gender discrimination in physics. And in it, he had a little cartoon, and the cartoon really resonated with me because it's exactly how I think a lot of, I have an engineering background. It's how a lot of tech people feel. The cartoon had 3 frames. In the first frame, there was like 3 women at a job fair, and there was 2 booths. And one of the booths at the job fair was a STEM booth, and the other one was gender studies. And they're both trying to coax the women over to sign up for jobs or different applications. And the next scene, they all go over to the gender studies booth. And in the last scene, they're all protesting that there's not enough women in STEM. And the guy in the STEM booth is like, what the hell? But it really seems like that, right? And I was just talking to a friend before the show who is an engineer. He's a little bit older than I am. But we both were talking about, both in college and in the workforce, women were welcome. And if you're a woman in an engineering school, I mean, guys are lining up to do your homework and help you out, and everyone's happy that you're in class, and it's like you've got high sexual market value, and that's something that's valuable and actually is an advantage to you. And the same thing happened in the workforce, at least in my experience. Now, a sample size of 2, my friend and myself, is not statistics, but from our perspective, we were kind of scratching our head like, why are they thinking there's bias here? Because there's certainly, we've never seen it.
Right.
That's all I wanted to throw out. But anyway,
no, I appreciate that because you make me think of the James Damore controversy at Google. I read his memo and I was like, wait, hold up, I didn't see anything sexist here. He was talking about how to how to actually maybe attract more women to Google, if that's what the goal was. And
yeah, no, he was trying to solve the problem sincerely.
Yeah, sincerely, and without just this like rhetoric that doesn't match reality. I mean, one of the things about that is I saw a statistic which said, women who are on the higher end, exceptional in terms of math and science, are usually also exceptional in other areas as well. Whereas the men who are on that upper end, exceptional in science and math, usually is only that's the only area they're that gifted in. And so very gifted women they have a lot more options. And that stat's amazing. It's like, that explains a lot. I went to a science and math school. The women there not everyone there ended up in science and math. I didn't. I'm not saying I'm gifted. Right. I was in the lower end.
No, you're making a valid point. And actually, the interesting thing to look at is if you look at countries around the world, the countries with more gender equality, females opt out of science more than the countries with less gender equality. So when you give women agency, which I used to think was part of feminism, and let them choose what they want to do, they don't choose 50-50 balance in physics.
Right. They choose to work with, women prefer, and this is self-reported in studies, women prefer to work with people and men prefer to work with objects. And that's self-reported. It's like, I don't know.
It's also true in monkeys.
Oh, yeah. The rhesus monkey studies, right? They give the baby, female monkeys were more likely to play with dolls than the male monkeys with trucks.
Yeah, and it's also true with human babies before they're socialized.
Wow.
So, yeah. And I feel like I derailed us. So you're busy in LA, going to church, reading a self-help book that on 2x speed, realizing that, hey, this victim culture is maybe not healthy.
Right. I had been unhappy with some parts of my career, I think, for a while without realizing it, or just certain things, working with certain people who I should not have been working with, well beyond the date at which I should have quit. And I think those things are kind of interesting because it's almost like totally saying it's up to you to change it or leave it or just accept it. But I had a client who just left in a horrible way, just kind of a backstabbing way. And I remember, and I called my ex-husband. I was devastated. I was crying. I'm like, I can't believe this happened. I can't believe this person would do this to me. And he said a very wise thing that first day. He was like, you told me 2 years ago that you didn't like this person as a human, and that if you didn't work with them, you wouldn't want to know them. So why you should have done something. I'm like, oh, and I couldn't hear it that day because I was so angry. I'm the victim here, But over time, it's like, oh yeah, if you don't fix it, the God or the universe, whatever, is going to kick you in the ass and be like, hey, you hate the situation. Let me fix it for you. And I still didn't learn my lesson after that. I got into another one where I got out sooner. Actually, in that one, it was my decision, but I still stayed too long. I still, sat in a situation that I didn't enjoy. But coincidentally, it was around the time I was listening to Eckhart Tolle that I decided to end that relationship.
I got to say, one of the best psychological tools for me, and actually it's something I also advise founders on when they are thinking about when they have employee issues, right? It's just jettison toxic people. Just get rid of them. No matter who they are in your life, if they're toxic and they're causing problems, just get rid of them.
Amount of money.
It's a free country, kind of. You don't have to associate with them.
Exactly. And I think we get locked into this idea of like, oh, but with the money or the idea that other people have about what I'm doing, or it's all this stuff that has nothing to do with whether you're actually fulfilled and happy or whether this is a healthy thing or not. So like, I finally came to the opinion that like, no amount of money is worth that because life's short, man. Anyway, so that was happening. And then I read Eckhart Tolle. So the summer, like right before the 2016 election, I went on a rabbit hole, like maybe in June or July that summer, of videos on YouTube of liberal or people on my side physically attacking Trump supporters. And I went down this rabbit hole, and there are lots of these videos, and I had never seen them.
By the way, there's someone on chat right now who was beaten up by a liberal in Berkeley.
Wow, I believe it. There were a lot of people being beaten up by so-called liberals, and I had no idea. I'd been hearing stuff during the election that, like, the narrative on my side was Trump supporters are violent and they attack people and whatever, but I didn't ever remember seeing any videos of that. I just would hear, they're violent. And I think there was actually maybe one I saw someone got punched someone, But man, when I don't know what led me to it, I can't remember, but I saw the video of the girl being egged and trying to get out of the crowd, get back into the hotel. And then I saw the one of the guy who was just hit in the back of the head and bleeding, and the mob was like chasing him down the street. And anyway, there were a few of them. And I was weeping. I was like, this isn't, because this is my side doing this. And I had no idea. And I was furious, but I was also really, I just felt, I don't know. I just, everything was kind of confusing for me because that wasn't what I thought was happening. And I think part of my mind was trying to justify it, like I think SJWs do, but it was too, just seeing it made me, emotional. So that stuck with me. And then right after that, sometime that summer, I think, was when all of those police officers in Dallas were shot at the Black Lives Matter rally. And I saw friends in my timeline who were gleeful about it. Like, they were simultaneously saying it had nothing to do with Black Lives Matter, but also kind of celebrating it. And I just couldn't believe. I was like, I don't care what our the ends don't justify the means. If you're saying that we have this lofty end goal of racial equality, and therefore these people are oppressors, and whatever the justification, it's wrong. I mean, these people were murdered, and that just really stuck with me and made me start to question things. And I started to get angry because I wasn't seeing any people in my echo chamber who were sharing the opinion that I had. And everyone had the same opinion. And I had self-selected that echo chamber, by the way. Like, I carefully cultivated it for 20 years. All of these people agree with me on everything. So then if you change your mind, you're like, what do I do now? So that, I think that was the beginning. And then right before the election, like right around October or so, maybe a little before that, I heard of Dr. Jordan Peterson, who, like, a friend had linked to. Now it gets controversial. No. I mean, he's going to push you over the edge. So I can see where this is going. Didn't do it. Yeah. Michael Bernard Beck was good. Then, Jordan Peterson. Someone posted something about how he's a transphobe. So I went to watch the video fully expecting to hate on him, my friends, and I watched his video. I was like, wait a minute, I don't think he's a transphobe at all. He has a very good point about compelled speech. He's not saying anything transphobic. Take a step back and listen to him, right? And so I started watching.
And he said, by the way, he'll call anyone whatever gender pronoun they want.
Yeah. His
Personally,
issue is
he just doesn't want it to be a law.
Forcing you to. That's the issue there. People, you can't see the difference between that. But I really enjoyed his video, and also I started watching some of his others, and he really helped me to explain some of the stuff I was seeing in the ideology I was wrapped up in, but didn't know how to give words to, or wasn't really sure. Maybe it's just me and I'm crazy. And then I'm like, no, this is what I'm seeing happening. And so after the election, I couldn't understand why Trump won. I was convinced Clinton was going to win. And I started trying to understand how and why. And I was sharing a couple of, I guess, more nuanced articles about maybe this is, led to it, or maybe, and I remember one of them was about
articles that weren't just racist and bigot populated.
Right. And so I immediately got slapped down by my SJW friends, who were basically like, he got elected because of racism. He got elected because of sexism, period. And if you try to dig up other reasons, you're part of the problem, blah, blah. I mean, that's essentially the message they give you.
Right, which is why they will never win anymore. Yeah. But that's.
I couldn't believe it. I was like, don't we want to figure out what happened really? So that next time not let it happen. Yeah. But no, so I got, and I saw a few other friends trying to do the same thing, trying to understand it. And every single time I saw someone post something a little thoughtful, like, maybe look at this article about PC culture and this maybe being a response to it in some way, they would just get attacked and mobbed, right? So, and then the safety pin thing happened. And the safety pin thing was probably my last straw. I was like, enough. Because
what was this? Which safety pin thing? What are you talking about?
Oh, bless your heart. You weren't in this little world.
No, I was. I knew Trump was going to win. In fact, we had an election viewing at my house where all of us there kind of expected him to. So.
I did what a lot of people in my echo chamber did that night, which was sitting in front of the TV crying.
I'm sure. I'm sure. So wait, what's the safety pin thing?
So right after the election, there was just, the amount of hatred and vitriol, and I've never seen the likes of it in my side before, right? And it just increased to like a 10. And there were just hateful opinion pieces after hateful opinion pieces. And a lot of my friends, keep in mind, are people I would call, or were at the time, people I call professional SJWs. They get paid, they're journalists, they get paid to write opinion pieces to do critical theory in the form of journalism. So everything is written through the perspective of this is sexist, this is racist, etc. And so those people were writing a lot of hateful opinion pieces, and there started to be this thing in the SJW echo chamber of like, okay, this election of Trump is we just elected Hitler, and he's going to put all the women and people of color and gay people in camps, and like we need to wear safety pins, and white people especially need to wear safety pins to show that we're allies of marginalized people. And so all these people started wearing safety pins, and then like within a matter of days, there were the opposite opinion pieces. Talk about, you said there's infighting, right? Within a matter of days, there were the opposite. You white people need to take those safety pins off. You're just trying to show that you're a good white person, and how dare you, wear those safety pins. And so then I had
you're appropriating safety pins.
Yeah, and I'm like, wow, just watching it volley back and forth. And then there were seriously white, mostly female SJWs in my timeline, women I used to respect, who were posting stuff that was basically like, people of color, help me. Like, what should I wear the safety pin? Should I not? Tell me what to do. I don't know how to be a good person.
How am I an ally? How can I be an ally? Yeah.
And I that just blew my mind. I'm like, you don't wait for somebody to tell you how to be a good person. And the fact that you think that safety pin means anything is like, you're looking in the wrong place, man. And so that blew my mind. And I think that was the final straw. And I wrote a letter to Jordan Peterson that he read on his channel at the time, and he changed some identifying factors, and he emailed me and was like, I read this letter, I hope it's okay. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so afraid that I'll be found out. But at the same time, and I remember he said something about, you need to get over your fear. And I'm like, I get that logically, but I'm afraid. And I was still trying to do at that time what I did for a living. I was still trying to manage comedians and produce TV content or web content. And from my SJW perspective, and I felt like a huge fraud because now my opinions were changing. And so it took me about 6 months after that until I think I wrote that first essay in May of 2017 to get over my fear. And it just, one day I woke up and I was like, I'm not, I have to say something. I'm not afraid anymore. So, it took quite a while after my awakening or whatever. And it's still happening. It's a trend. It's something that continues. It's an evolution. It's not like, oh, I'm a different person now. It's just I'm evolving. So,
well, any intelligent, introspective person evolves over time. I mean, we've all changed our opinions, and so
I don't know.
That makes sense. So when you say not everyone knows you wrote a piece about divorcing SJW culture, and then subsequently, I think, lost a lot of friends about it. What was, so can you talk about that just a little bit, like the piece and then what happened?
Well, the piece, I think, even trying to read it, even though I wrote it, trying to read it and be non-biased, I don't think it was controversial at all. There was nothing in it really. Maybe the title was the most controversial thing because it was called Leaving the SJW Cult and Finding Myself. And so people had issue with the title. But in general, it was talking about how my timeline was flooded. And I shared a sample post where a friend of mine had posted, kill Trump, kill Bannon, kill Ivanka, kill Jared. It was just a whole list of people he wanted to kill. On social media, he posted that.
That's a good Marxist right there.
Well, yeah. And then the crazy thing, Carter, was at the bottom, he said, what do you say? I'm a pacifist. He said he was a pacifist. But like, enough is enough. It's time to murder. And I couldn't believe it. It had stayed up for over a day or two when I saw it. Nobody had reported it. People were liking it. And that was I saw a lot of stuff like that in my timeline. So I just kind of wrote this piece of like, what is this? This isn't liberalism. And this isn't what I signed up for. And I've seen, at that time, I was seeing lots of people just celebrating and laughing about the rising addiction rates in the white working class, the rising suicide rates, just not displaying any empathy whatsoever, just hatefully, gleefully talking about assassination all the time. And so the piece was just sort of like, I'd been to this spiritual center out here in Austin. By that time I was living in Texas, and I heard this preacher who he talked about the Nietzsche quote about be careful fighting monsters lest you become the monster that you're fighting. And that just stuck with me for a long time. I still think about that quote all the time, because I felt like all these people, and myself included, had become monsters, because we're in the pursuit of monsters. That can allow you to become very monstrous. I mean, if you've convinced yourself that the people you're fighting are Nazis, like you can justify doing anything.
Yeah, I was going to say anything's fair game at that point, right?
And I still think of that quote, because I don't want to do it the other way either. I don't want to become like, I think of SJWs as monstrous, but I don't want to become a monster by fighting them now. Like you just have to kind of keep I think that whole quote's about just keeping yourself in check.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you and I share exactly the same perspective here, but I kind of categorize people generally. This isn't a political categorization per se, but it's basically busybodies and people who just want to be left the fuck alone, right? And there's people who are just like, I don't want to care who you're having sex with and what drugs you're taking and what I don't want to care. I don't care. Like if we have a voluntary interaction, great. You don't want to bake a cake for me or talk to me? Okay. Like just leave me alone and I will leave you alone. And there's like that kind of mentality. And then there's this mentality of the world should be a certain way, and I will use whatever means necessary to make it that way. And, this isn't black and white. I mean, there's people on both sides of the aisle that have their issues for which they're willing to use force to make the world the way they want. But I have not been conservative. And so there was always things I admired about the left, like, oh, well, at least they'll protect free speech, right? And at least they're not going to want to go to lots of wars. And at least the left, they're going to leave people alone in the personal realm, at least. Like maybe they want to tax people, and that's a problem, and I don't agree with that necessarily. But, they're going to leave people alone mostly. And they just stopped leaving people alone completely and have gone. I actually think the left is, I think if you looked at the definition of fascism, objectively, you must conclude that at least the radical left in this country are fascists.
Yes, I would say that.
That's my rant.
Yeah, I agree with you. When I was a kid, it was the radical right that was trying to tell me what I could watch or play or read, and censor what I had access to in terms of ideas. And now it's the left, and so it's completely.
Yeah, who's burning books now? It's not the conservatives.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And I don't think they realize though that they will call people fascists while they're behaving like fascists. Oh,
Antifa is the biggest fascist organization in the U.S. I mean, and I actually think that they, I'm not completely sure that they don't know that. I think that they just don't care. And anti-fascist is a label that they think will kind of work well. I mean, a lot of times they're people like that are often doing exactly what they're accusing you of doing, and that's kind of a normal.
I see a lot of
MO.
Yeah, I think there's probably projection in every different side or belief system or whatever. But I have resided for so long on the left, and specifically in the SJW left. So that's what I know, and that's what I see. A lot of times people are like, why do you criticize left so much? Why do you criticize? And because that's where I am. I don't know the right. You go criticize the right if you're over there, Yeah. And besides, everyone around me is criticizing the right. That's all I hear. But
yeah, I was going to say, I'll tell you why I don't criticize the right very much, even though I'm not on the right. It's because the media and everyone else is doing it for me.
Yeah.
Like when I think the right is the big threat to culture, then I'll start criticizing the right. But right now I need allies to fight these crazy fascists who basically want to control what I say and what I do and put people in, categories based on their genetics and kill people that they disagree with.
Oh, they're totally, I believe someone on Facebook, this Kavanaugh thing. Okay, I've been in a lot of conversations maybe shouldn't have gotten into, but one woman who I disagreed with her proceeded to call me all manner of names, because they usually go straight to name calling. They can't seem to separate emotion from their opinion. But so yeah, she called me a lot of names, and then I just still didn't back away and say, oh, I'm sorry. So then she threatened to kill me twice. And I was like, wow, because you care so much about women.
Why do you need to be killed twice? Isn't once enough?
Well, because the first time I just said, really? Like, you're going to do a death threat to show me how much you care about women? And then she had to do it again. She told me she was going to cut my throat with her panties and use it. Anyway, it was two different, just very grotesque death threats. And this woman was calling me a sexist, and I'm like, and she also insulted my mom, and I'm like, but you don't understand. You're not really representing yourself or your opinion very well. Yeah, I believe a lot of them harbor murderous rage. I do.
Yeah, it's childhood trauma, and instead of helping them heal it in college, they're fueling it.
Yeah, and they believe that they can justify it because they've dehumanized the people they're targeting. But it's all a way to avoid working on themselves or looking internally. It's like, oh, these people are wrong. I'm going to go out and,
as Jordan Peterson would say, make your own damn bed first.
Yeah,
and then tell me.
That helps me a lot too, actually. You know what? I'm reading a book right now. I started hosting this online book club, and we're on our second book right now. We're reading Jonathan Haidt's The Righteous Mind, not the one that just came out, which is very relevant to this conversation, The Coddling of the American Mind. I can't wait to read that one.
Okay.
It's based on an Atlantic piece he wrote, which that Atlantic piece was also one of the things that first woke me up. I think I read that Atlantic piece around the same time I was going down those rabbit holes of looking at what my side was doing. But the piece was called The Coddling of the American Mind, and it was about what's been happening on college campuses with trigger warnings and safe spaces, and how it's basically an orthodoxy. You're not allowed to disagree. And if you have differing opinions, you just keep them to yourself, because and they have hotlines now in colleges where you can where you can pick up a number and like report your friend for, I heard my friend in the bathroom saying this, like just report people for speech. Like that's.
So, I mean, so your friend Jason made a point that fascism is more nationalistic and less globalist, but that to me is a very fascist thing. Report your parents, report your friends. There's thought crimes happening.
There's thought crimes happening. I went to see Jonathan Haidt speak here in Texas, and he spoke at this college campus, and they had these students on stage afterwards, and he was talking about a lot of this. And one of the students completely embodied everything he was talking about. She couldn't have been a better illustration of our fears of what's happening on campuses if she had tried to come in and act that out. She asked him a couple of questions, and he posed a question back to her. He said, well, let's take an example of someone who's not on the right, because she was talking about shutting down, no platforming, shutting down speakers or something. And he said, right. Well, let's take Heather McDonald, who had just at that time, I think, had been shut down at some college, maybe in California. But she wrote the book about, I haven't read it, but she wrote a book about, I think it's called The War on Police or something, but it's basically countering the narrative that Black Lives Matter is helping at all. And anyway, she's been shut down. So he said, what do you think? Should this woman be allowed to speak? And the student was hemming and hawing, and she couldn't. She's like, well, she should be, but it's almost like she was catching herself saying something, and she had a critic. She had an internal SJW who was there like, right. Better not say that. And so she kept walking back everything. But I don't know, maybe some people would say that it's harmful to have her speak, and it could be harm, but I don't know. And it was torturous. Like you could hear a pin drop. Everybody was like, I felt so bad for this girl, because part of her brain clearly was trying to have an original thought, and the other part was like, get back in the cage. You're not allowed to have a thought. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's really I forget the term. Actually, Ayn Rand spoke about this psychological condition, and I forget the term that she used for it. I'm going to be pissed that I can't remember it, because It's not that complicated, but there's this sort of mindset of instead of getting knowledge from, instead of making decisions yourself and like deriving knowledge from your own perception and using your own consciousness and your own rational thought process, there's this kind of idea that what's true is kind of what people say is true. And so if you ask a question like, should X, Y, Z happen? If your brain has to go through these contortions to be like, well, I don't know. What would Keri say? What will these people, what will the mob say? I can't say an opinion because the right thing is whatever the mob says. And I'm totally not clear on what the mob's going to say about this right now.
So who wrote about this?
Ayn Rand wrote about it in probably Introduction to Objectivist Epistemology or something. It's shit. Katrina's on. If she's still on chat, you should tell me what it is, Katrina. I don't remember the word, but anyway.
But yeah, that's exactly.
I'll put it. I can put it in the. I'll edit the notes later and put the definition and the word in there. But
cool.
But that's what. Yeah, it's a real thing.
What's the not what is the answer I think is true, but what is the answer I think is right, and that's what our brain was trying to do. What's the answer that people want to hear, or the correct? No, just say what you think is true, man. So yeah. I have a lot of frustration, Carter.
Yeah. No, I get it. So let's, I don't want this, I could talk to you for hours, but I don't want this to go on for too long. So I want to move on a little bit and get to, so you released the letter, and just really quickly tell us what happened to your friends and your social life after that. And it seems like it's changed quite dramatically.
Well, yeah, it has. I lost a lot of friends. I put friends in quotes because I've since realized SJWs don't have friends, they have allies. And if you stop being an ally, it's like, gone. So I lost a lot of the SJW friends online, but that was fine because it's not like I was super close to a lot of them. I lost a couple of close ones. And those, they hurt. But at the same time, I'm kind of like, if for anyone out there who might be afraid of losing friends, if that person is keeping you from expressing yourself or from trying to speak the truth instead of the right thing, then the socially correct thing or whatever, then they're probably not healthy for you. I mean, to go back to the toxic relationships. And somebody had just shared this quote with me. I forget what book it's from. I didn't read it. Someone shared it with me. And it's kind of cheesy, but it's true. He was like, some people are in your life for a reason, and some for a season, and some for a lifetime. And it's like, well, that person and I parted ways now. Maybe we'll come back together down the road. But for now, fine. If I lose friends by trying to speak or find the truth rather than just trying to appease the mob, well, then so be it. And it's actually clear. Well,
and they're not really friends because you're not really yourself. If you can't be yourself with people, then the relationship that they're having with you is with a false version of you. Exactly.
And it's cleared up a lot of room for new friends. I've made a lot of new interesting friends all over the spectrum. And I started hosting. So pretty soon after the election, again, I was trying to understand why Trump won. And I started hosting, at the time I was calling them free speech dinners. Now I call them civility dinners. But so every other month or so, we get together, and it's open to anyone who wants to come. We have Trump voters, we have Clinton voters, we have non-voters, third-party voters. We have atheists, we have evangelicals. It's just across the spectrum in terms of viewpoint. And we have dinner, we have discussion, and it's just the most amazing thing because you can leave there understanding someone's point of view better. And then also a lot of times what you find is that the people who are coming are already against stereotype in some way. I mean, and they're not tribalistic because they want to meet people and have discussions.
Right. They're willing to come to a civility dinner, which means they're not going to throw water on you and call you a racist.
Right. So it self-selects. Ideologues don't come. In fact, whenever I tell people about the civility dinners, I can usually tell if they're an ideologue or not, because the ideologues are like, oh, that sounds horrible. Why would you want to talk to XYZ? That's why.
Other ideas. What the hell are you thinking?
Yeah. So that's really great. And I've met a lot of people through just hosting that. And we've started hosting it at other regulars. We host it in different people's homes each time. And But yeah, that's really interesting. And also again about the people being against type. There's something there I'm still trying to figure out. But like the white evangelicals who come, they didn't vote for Trump, but the people of color who come did, and that's different than what you hear is the stereotype. And so, and also you sometimes get people arguing because they're open-minded, they're arguing the position of the other side or whatever. So there was a conservative who came one night.
Is a great sign. If someone can do that, that's a great sign.
Yeah, it's very interesting to see that. We had a conservative who came, who it was his first time there, and he was from Georgia, I believe, but he was arguing. We were talking about cultural flashpoints. He was defending the taking a knee during the national anthem, a conservative.
Yep.
And then we had a liberal who was explaining why it was offensive to take the knee. And so it was this interesting, like, wow, you've got this person on this side who understands, oh, I get why those people are offended. Let me try and explain it. And this person on the other side who's like, oh, I finally get why they want to take the knee. Let me explain it. And that was just, I thought that was great.
Yeah, no, that is great. That's awesome. So you're also doing, has your Unfriended podcast started yet? Because I'm excited for it, but I don't know if it started.
I wish I could plug it. I have a Twitter name, but I forget what it is because I haven't done anything yet. I've recorded one
Fair
episode.
Enough.
We're gonna do 4 more, and then we want to put them all out at once. So I guess if people want to know when it's coming out, just follow my Twitter, which is KSE Mamma Jamma, and then I'll post it on there. But yeah, I want to get 5 in the can. That way, if people like it, they can listen to all of them. But the podcast, we're going to interview each one. We're going to talk to someone who's lost a friend because of the polarized times that we're in. And they can be on the left or the right or wherever. It's just talking about friendships ending because of this crazy with us or against us kind of thing that's happening right now. So, and I know a lot of people have lost friends over it. I lost 14 friends in 2 days talking about Kavanaugh online. I thought.
So I know you want to talk about Kavanaugh, so that was a great segue. Go for it.
Well,
why did you lose 14 friends in 2 days, Keri?
Well, I thought I was shocked that the numbers plummeted that much because I was like, I thought all those people had already unfriended me, but clearly I
okay.
have more to. No, I think what's happened. I've been very vocal about it, so anybody can read my feed. But I think what's happening is really terrifying because. We believe in due process, not just as a legal concept, but as a cultural norm. Like we've always believed.
It's a moral concept.
It's a moral concept, yes. And so what I'm seeing happening is that we're suddenly saying allegations are enough. And allegations which don't meet the burden of proof to get a guilty verdict or even to be brought to trial or even to be brought to civil trial are somehow weighty enough to be used to destroy a person's reputation, their job prospects, their family's sense of security. And beyond Kavanaugh, what happens after Kavanaugh? Like you're setting a precedent here where this is okay to create this media shit circus of, dragging someone through the mud based on nothing but another person's word. And I think,
well, I mean, I don't think they actually mean that though. I think I think the Democrats have gotten to a point where they've taken a page from Saul Alinsky's playbook and they'll just do it's by any means necessary, right? It's not like they've set this precedent and then suddenly Lindsey Graham is gonna, when there's a leftist who's nominated, gonna suddenly like give weight to an accusation. And it's not like the Washington Post or the New York Times will apply that equally. It's just, they view what you and I view things as concepts and setting precedents and words having meaning. And I think the left largely views words as like magical polyphonic things they can say that like, if they hit the right combination, it will make people do what they want. And that's all they're doing. Like, oh, does gang rapist work? What if we say that? Will that stop you? Right? They don't care whether it's true.
They don't care whether it's true or not. And they were calling him evil.
No. And Cory Booker said, I don't care whether it's true or not.
And I've gotten pulled into so many discussions about it online where people are like, well, I believe this. And I'm like, well, I believe this. And I don't even, what I believe and what you believe doesn't even matter. I mean, ultimately, I can tell you what I believe if he's guilty or not, but it doesn't matter. I believe in evidence. So whatever my gut said, oh, I think that happened, I think it didn't, that has no bearing. Is there enough evidence to destroy this man's life? No. And the whole I believe women thing is just another, women are just as capable of lying as men, clearly.
As someone who's dated women for my entire life, I can guarantee that is true. Yes.
Yeah.
Women, if you think women have agency, if you are not condescending about women being some subspecies, then they are capable of all the great things and all the horrible, evil things that men are capable of. Yeah. They can be super smart and honest and upfront and straightforward and virtuous, and they can be rotten, lying pieces of shit, just like men.
Right. And they can also be confused, and they can also believe things that maybe, I don't know what's happening, whether this happened or not, but there's more than just like either she's lying or telling the truth. There's a lot of different things. People convince themselves of stuff all the time. But yeah, there's a great article you should read if you haven't. My favorite author in high school was Margaret Atwood, and to this day, my favorite book is still The Handmaid's Tale, which makes me so sad that there's all these SJWs dressing up like handmaids now. I'm like, I guarantee you haven't even read that book. I'm like an angry old man, like, read the book.
That was about Islam, right? But never mind.
They have no concept. The second season was, it was just an SJW fever dream. Once they got off the book, it's like, it was in the writer's room hands. But anyway, she wrote this great piece called Am I a Bad Feminist? And she basically was talking about the excesses of this Me Too movement and this whole idea of believe all women and the problems with that. And I think it was her that said in that piece, we're not angels and we're not devils. We're just humans like men. And
ultimately, I think it's going to backfire, because what's going to happen is regular people sitting on the sidelines are going to look at this and they're going to stop believing any accusation, because they're going to be like, I'm done. If you give me a choice between believing all women and believing no women, I'm just going to choose believing no women, because it's too disruptive to believe all women. And and that's unfortunate. And I think I don't know that a lot of people were in the exact same shoes as me, but I think maybe there were quite a large number. I didn't give a crap about Kavanaugh at the beginning. Mm-hmm. He wasn't my first pick. I didn't care. She came forward with her allegations, and my reaction was like, maybe. I don't know. It's like I can have sympathy for her and say maybe, and at the same time go, yeah, but there's not really enough to punish him for it. But like I can say, hey, I'm sorry that happened, and maybe you're right, but we'll never really know, and it's not enough to destroy the man's career. Now, and I think I have to catch myself sometimes because it's just emotional. At this point, I'm just like, fuck you. Kavanaugh should get confirmed. Yeah, it's just I'm like, I've become a fan of his confirmation, and I don't really care one way or another.
Well, see, right? The shit circus has got us both, because we're still emotionally reacting just from the other side.
Absolutely.
Right?
And I recognize it's totally emotional. It's not.
Yeah, because I didn't really care that much. I was reading there was an opinion piece I read that said a feminist defense of Kavanaugh or something, and that was interesting. I didn't know that much about him. I was reading about him, and what's really interesting to me is, since this whole circus started, a friend of mine who's against this witch hunt, because I do view it as a witch hunt, he listed all of his reasons. Oh, I think it's a mutual friend of ours, actually. But he listed all of his reasons for not supporting Kavanaugh, and about his stance on the Fourth Amendment. He had a lot of different things I hadn't even heard.
Those are fine reasons.
I know, but the tragedy there is I haven't heard any of those reasons, and I haven't heard anything about any actual relevant, reasons why he should or should not be confirmed. All I've heard is this: he said, she said circus, and that's and that's what it's going to be from now on. We've already, the media and everything's already, the politics in this country, it's just a they want us to hate each other, and they want everything to be part of it, but I think it's just going to get worse from now on.
Do you think there's been a shift? Because from my perspective, Lindsey Graham's not a guy who I ever viewed as a particularly strong character. I kind of viewed him as a wet fish and not particularly that exciting. But Lindsey Graham went all Trump the other day. And to me, that's a cultural signal that if he feels like it's okay to go all Trump, and he's made that transition to basically being aggressive. It may signify kind of a deeper cultural shift. What are your thoughts there?
Maybe. I think they may have overplayed their hand, honestly, because he was moved by passion. That speech made me proud to be from South Carolina. I don't actually agree with Lindsey Graham very much, but I loved his speech, and I loved Kavanaugh's. I keep seeing in the news and on SNL and other places that he embarrassed himself with his statement. I don't think he embarrassed himself at all.
I thought it was brilliant.
It was brilliant. And what kind of emotional response are you supposed to have if you're innocent? They've never asked themselves if he's innocent. They've never considered that. So they're viewing it through a spectrum. Talk about viewing things through a lens. But I thought he was purely very appropriate. I would have been more indignant and more angry that my family had been put through that. But I do think they overplayed their hand. I know here in Texas, there's this, they're pushing Beto, and nationally they're pushing Beto. I've seen lots of entertainers, people, even I used to rep, who are fundraising for him, people who don't live in Texas, lots of Californians, people in New York, entertainment industry. He's been on all the late night shows. It's a real national push to pick our senator. And I am a lifelong Democrat. I am going to probably be voting Republican the first time. I've said I am, and I'm still pretty sure I am this November, because I don't like what I'm seeing in his speeches, and I don't like what I saw in the debate. And I never would have thought I would vote Republican, but I think that Republicans have become the most liberal party, the most liberal option at the moment. Like, if the Democrats go back to being a liberal party, great. But right now, I'm not left with a lot of options if I want to vote for liberal values. And so anyway, I'm getting off track. What was I saying? Oh, so I think they overplayed their hand, because I was thinking Beto is going to win with all this outside support and the fundraising, but with the way they're treating Kavanaugh, I think they're waking people up. So there are people like me who are on the left, and even my friend who's libertarian, people in the center who are, like you said, getting emotionally very angry that this is happening and that it's still going on, and that a person is being treated this way. And so I went from over here on the Kavanaugh issue to, I don't really know, to being like, you better confirm this man. And I think they're also waking up people who are already conservative, like people who are already would have been in support of him, but maybe not that energized to go to the polls. So I expect a lot of people to turn out for Cruz just based on their anger at what the Democratic Party is doing to this man on the national stage right now. So that's I could be wrong.
No, I mean, I hope you're right. I think there is going to be, I think the last 2 weeks have been very good for Republicans in November. I would say that the way I look at it is, and I know Jason corrected me on fascism technically being nationalism, but let's just stick with the kind of let's call it global fascism kind of attitude from the left. When you see that and it's that blatant and they're willing to, be that horrible to someone, it just kind of unites people. And it's like, look, I don't like the Republicans either, but we've got to stop this common enemy. This is a horrible, these crazy fascist radical leftists are more toxic than either side has ever been, and we need to stop them. And so if that means voting Republican,
so be it. I think they're
so be it.
Authoritarian is a great word to use if fascist is, because they are authoritarian. They want to be able to control people and tell people what to do. They are concerned with power. And I think that they're like the mirror image of I think that's why I call them the alt-left sometimes, and not just SJW, because they're like the mirror image of the alt-right, in that they are both identitarian in nature. They reduce everyone, the collectivists, they reduce everyone to their race and sex and sexuality. Both of them do that. They're both concerned with power. They're both controlling. They're both into censorship. With violence if it promotes their. So I think they're. It's funny because they kind of need each other. The existence of the other one helps them to recruit. So that's why.
Maybe, although I would argue, and this is probably a topic for another show sometime, but I would argue that I think the actual crazies on the alt-right side, there aren't as many as we're being led to believe.
I agree.
And that there's a much larger volume of Antifa type people on the left than there are, Nazis in North Carolina or whatever. Like
they couldn't
that's
even
my.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. They couldn't even get what did they get? 25 people in DC at this march or something? Like, I get more people than that at a civility dinner, and they're not very. Nobody is publicly supporting the ideas of the alt-right, and for good reason. But on the other hand,
of course,
there are a lot of mainstream people supporting the ideology of the alt-left. So even though Antifa is just that's like their muscle, if you could call them muscle, haha. Antifa is their muscle, but the ideology is much bigger than that. And the ideology, I think, has become mainstream. And so, yeah, I think there's a lot more of them, or at least their influence is a lot greater. I think you froze up, or maybe I froze up. Can you still hear me?
Oh, who knows what it was, but okay. You're back. I'm back. We should probably wrap it up anyway, because we're well over an hour. But before we leave, is there how should people follow you, support you? People know how to follow and support Unsafe Space. So what can they do to support and follow you?
I'd say just on Twitter for now, KSE Mama Jamma. And then from there, you can find my Medium page, where if I get inspired to write another essay, you'll see when. I occasionally put essays up there. But yeah, at some point, I'm going to announce this Unfriended podcast, so that'll be fun.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time, Keri. Goodbye, everyone. Keri, you can stay on. We'll chat afterwards. But bye to everyone else here. Thanks again for thanks for taking the time to chat. Later.
Bye, guys. Tiger, come.